All right, everybody, I'm live and I got Mr. Johnny Gentry. You know, man, people I want to say, man, how you know so much history? Because I get with people like Mr. Gentry, which is used to be my teacher over at Jack Gates in photography. You know, Mr. Gentry, let me introduce you to everybody. This is our Jack Gates family and a Booker T. Washington family and Cashmere and Wheatley. They all follow me on Facebook and YouTube, and they all admire me because what I've done, I went into all the black communities from First Ward all the way to Sixth Ward to Sunnyside to Acres Home to Pleasantville, Clinton Park, and Fifth Ward, Fourth Ward, and even did something in Studewood, in Independent Heights. And so one thing I really needed, and I really didn't get a lot of depth in because I knew you was from Fourth Ward. And I say, if anybody know anything about Fourth Ward, it's Mr. Gentry. Mr. Johnny Gentry, it's a pleasure to be here in your home, for you to let me come here and interview you and talk about some of the good things that not only the golden eagle of Booker T. Washington, the class of what, 53 or 55?
The class of 1953 Die-Hard Eagles.
You know, and it's so good, Mr. Gentry, because we got so much to talk about. Not only Booker T. Washington, not only the idea of you coming out of Fourth Ward, and how Fourth Ward have now went into what they call Midtown, and some of it calling Freedom Town, and you going to Gregory. Is that right, Gregory Elementary?
I'm an alumnus of Gregory Elementary School.
And you know, now let's talk about Booker T. Washington. You know, coming out of Booker T. Washington, Mr. Gentry, in 1953. And I'm assuming Dr. Ira B. Bryant was the principal at that time?
Yes, sir. Dr. Bryant was the principal of Booker T. Washington High School at that time. Senior high school at that time.
Right, and they were still out in Fourth Ward.
Yes, sir. We were in Fourth Ward. We were in Fourth Ward at 303 West Dallas.
Okay, now right now, what's that location? Would that be right there by 45, or would it be over there by Antioch?
No, sir. You know, Houston City annexed and did some moving. Where Booker Washington used to be is right where One Allen Center is now.
That's the parking spot?
Yes, sir.
For One Allen Center?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brazzers runs the reason why I know where Booker Washington used to be, because the Pilgrim Temple used to be on that corner. They never changed at Brazzers. Brazzers run straight into the City Hall. So that's how I knew what Booker Washington was. Booker Washington sit right in front of Brazzers at 303 on the corner of West Dallas and Frederick.
Okay. Now, when you came out of when you came out of Booker T. Washington, and I know, and hopefully I can come back and talk to you again about Fourth Ward.
Yes, sir, you can. Anytime you need to talk to me about Fourth Ward or about Booker T. Washington, you're certainly welcome.
I thank you so much, Mr. Gentry, because there's so many people leaving here with a lot of history, and these young people want to hear it. You know, they're begging for it. They're starving for it. You know how your stomach is cramping when you're hungry?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's how these young people are when I put this stuff on the internet and in Google and YouTube.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear they're hungry and want to know about the history, because if we don't give it to them, they will never know, because people out here now don't care about our history, and we do.
And you know, it's so good to know, because there's so many people that finished from Booker T. Washington out there in Independent Heights. Never knew Booker T. Washington was downtown in Fourth Ward. Some of them never knew. They thought Booker T. Washington always been on 39th Street. You know, and it's so good to have people like you to expose this and let them know, no, that's not the original Booker T. The Booker T original is, like you said, in Fourth Ward, right there off of West Dallas and Brazzers. Is that right?
West Dallas, on the corner of West Dallas and Frederick, and it faced Brazzers.
And you know, and it's so good, Mr. Gentry, and to know that now when you got out of Booker T in '53, did you wind up going? What college did you wind up going to?
I went to Texas Southern University.
Wow, so you went to TSU?
TSU, yes, sir.
And then from TSU, what did after you left TSU and graduated? This is before you went to Jack Gates.
Yes, sir.
And what did you do after you graduated out of Texas Southern?
I went to work in the photographic industry. I worked for a firm called Styles and Associates Photography, where we did commercial, industrial, and public relations and advertising photography.
And you know, it's so good because you taught photography over at Jack Gates. And to know that I wasn't one of your students because I never had, just show you how things is, Mr. Gentry, how God is. I never had the slightest idea I'd be doing what I'm doing today. If I did, I'd have stayed up under your room. Now, here's the part here, Mr. Gentry, being hired over there. And Dr. Caldwell, when Dr. Caldwell left Wheatley, and a lot of people didn't understand, he took a lot of his staff from over there, from Phyllis Wheatley.
Yes, sir.
And then a lot of people was upset because Mr. Holland didn't go to Jack Gates. And a lot of people stayed over there at the old Jack Gates, which became Ryan Junior High School. Now, I could see that Dr. Caldwell needed some work done. I mean, work done he needed principles. Not principles. He already had himself coming out of Phyllis Wheatley. Yes, and then also he left Mr. William Moore in control over Phyllis Wheatley because William Moore was his assistant for years and years. Right. But then he had to get another assistant principal to go up under him, and that's when he came up with Mr. J.R. Alexander. And I never knew nothing about Mr. Alexander. Can you explain to us about, which was my principal? That was the principal I graduated under.
Exactly.
Can you explain about Mr. Alexander and how he wound up going over to Yates? Well, a little bit that you do know.
Okay. Well, Mr. Alexander was the teacher of what we used to call commercial cooking at Booker T. Washington. And the athletes took commercial cooking because we could eat.
Okay.
And then at the first, second, and third period was when that was commercial cooking. Then at the fifth, he was off at the fourth period. So the fifth and sixth period, he taught wood shop. So okay. we made whatnot shelves, and we made any bases, anything we needed to make. We made it out of wood with Mr. Alexander.
So Mr. Alexander really was a vocational teacher in reality, wasn't he?
Mr. Alexander was a vocational teacher. Mr. Alexander finished from Tuskegee, so he had a good background in vocational education.
And this is the reason why Dr. Caldwell chose him to be his assistant principal, because at the time Jack Gates had opened up, and Jack Gates had so much vocational education over there, such as that cleaning and pressing, stuff that Wheatley and Cashmere didn't have. The cleaning and pressing, the printing shop, and the mechanic and the photography.
Yeah, we had at Jack Gates at that time. We had cleaning and pressing, we had photography, we had printing, we had auto mechanics, we had electronics. We had vocational drafting. We had some machine shop. We had all those programs. No other school had those programs. No other high school in Houston had those programs, except for San Jose Center during that time. They had, because it was totally white then.
Right.
But Jack Yates had the programs and cosmetology. So we had the programs at Jack Yates. We were the premier school at Jack Yates. Had a great staff. Never be another staff like that staff.
And it just show you how God worked and how blessing it was, because Dr. Caldwell had to put all that together, man. When he left Wheatley to come over to Yates, a lot of people didn't want to follow him over there at Yates because they wanted to stay with Mr. Holland. And it was understood. They were diehard Harlem people. But, we understood people like Coach Patterson and Raymond Daniels and Mr. Coach Evans. And all of them knew that the future was there at the new Jack Gates at 3703 Sampson. So they went on over there to join Dr. Caldwell.
Exactly. You're right.
And it's so good to know this, Mr. Gentry, and pass this history on. And by the way, I got to tell you this. Our principal today, I know she looks at a lot of our videos. She graduated from Booker T. Washington.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Wow.
Miss Tiffany Gilry.
Awesome.
Her father and her mother graduated from Booker T.
All right.
1966 class.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And she's one of the. We right now is in one of the elite bachelor programs.
Very good.
And they only had 5 schools to qualify.
Excellent. Wow.
5.
Wow.
None of them was a 4A, was a 5A school.
Wow.
And the only one that qualified was out of the 4A was Yates.
Very good. I'm happy for JY.
And in the 5A schools, they didn't have anybody to qualify.
Wow.
And the rest of them, the other 4 6A schools, Bel Air, Lamar, and the Heights,
Wow.
and the school out there in Chavez.
Okay.
Those was the only one to qualify.
Wow.
And so Yates is doing some powerful things. And they looks at a lot of our videos here, and I give a shout out to Mr. Thaddeus Edwards and our, what can we say about our city council lady,
Yes.
Miss
yes.
Carolyn Evans Shabazz.
Shabazz, yeah.
Yeah, and I know you've been knowing her since she was a baby.
I knew I remember when she was born.
Ain't that something? Because you worked with Coach Evans when you started over there.
Exactly. We were great friends. Coach Evans and I were great friends. And in fact, I was friends of the family.
Oh, wow. Now, we're talking about Jack Yates, everybody. And we also talking about Booker T. And a lot of people didn't understand the overflow from Booker T went to Jack Yates in 1926. When Mr. Ryan, in fact, they transferred Mr. Ryan from Colored High to Jack Yates. You know.
That's history.
That's history, y'all. And followed him. When he left to open up Jack Yates, then Colored High hired Mr. William E. Miller as the principal over there at Colored High.
That's history.
And then a year later, 1927, I think that to me, I wasn't born, but to me that sounded like a good year. The reason why
That was a good year. I wasn't born, but that was a good year.
The reason why I say that, Mr. Gentry, because they gave the blacks a high school on the north side, which was Phyllis Wheatley.
Exactly.
And then in 1927, they opened up the first and only black-owned hospital, Negro Hospital.
That's right.
And then in 1927, they gave us another elementary school in 3rd Ward, which was Douglas.
Exactly.
So to me, and then in 1927, top this out, Mr. Gentry, they changed the name from Colored High to Booker T. Washington.
Exactly. You're right. You're on target.
And it's so good to know this history, y'all, and to know all about our black history. Now, Mr. Gentry, when you started over there at Yates, and this is a lot of people didn't understand this, and I didn't until you told me. Yates was not only the exclusive black school that had all these vocational classes, but they also did something that most white kids didn't do. Only colleges and pros did, and that was to go out there and film the high school football game that you were doing for Coach Patterson. Kind of explain that to us, Mr. Gentry.
Well, you know, my high school class, my classes filmed all of Jack Yates' football games. Kid would say, the coach would say to the kid, son, you missed your tackle. Well, with the films that we were doing every Friday night, they didn't lie. So we had films of every football game while I was there that Jack Yates played. State championship teams, we filmed those games. We even had college coaches coming to want to see the films that my class filmed.
Wow!
So we got several people who went to the pros from looking at those films.
Wow, and we get that and think about that and the history about that, about you filming those games, and Coach Patterson would look at them the next day, and to see how effective they was. Wasn't no other high school that was doing this, was there?
No other high school was filming football games. Jack Yates photography class was filming the football games during that time, but we didn't film for nobody but Jack Yates.
Wow! So even the white kids over there at the university,
they didn't have nobody filming games. We filmed the games for Jack Yates.
Now y'all see why we do these things that I do, because Jack Yates always been a leader, y'all.
Yes.
We don't sit around and wait for the white folks to do something. We do it first ourselves.
Exactly.
You know, right now I'm the one doing all these videos on these class reunions. White people ain't doing it, but black people today, Mr. Gentry, they sit around and wait for the white folks. If the white people ain't doing it, well, we don't need to do it. I don't see nobody doing it.
We need to know our history. I'm glad that you're doing it, Robert, because If you weren't doing it, nobody else would be doing it. And this is history that our young people need to know. See, I'm 87 years old. I'm gonna pass on. You're a bit younger than I am, but you're gonna pass on. There would be no history. No history for our people. They won't know anything about our history. I'm happy for you, man, that you're doing this.
And this is what, when I looked at it, Mr. Gentry, and I looked at things before God put me in to do this, I looked at it and say, we don't have no legacy.
No.
And a legacy is something that was passed on.
Exactly.
You know, this is what I do. These videos are legacy. It ain't about your class. It's about the school. You leaving a legacy for the school. So stop being so doggone selfish because you can't see the future. See, some of us, we can't see nothing but today. Some of us don't even see the day. I don't think we see is what's happening right now.
Some of them don't. Some people don't even know what's going on. They're so wrapped up in themselves and so busy trying to make a fast dollar until they don't know.
And you know, and they don't realize how important the legacy, our history and our legacy is. Right. Just like all the yearbooks. Now, that's another thing that a lot of people didn't realize, that when you came to Yates, you started doing all of our yearbooks. Is that right?
We turned out award-winning yearbooks. Mr. George McElroy and I went to TSU together, and Ms. Carrie McAfee. Ms. Carrie McAfee was the English teacher. Mr. McElroy was the journalism teacher. We turned out award-winning yearbooks every year with my photography students, with the journalism students, and Ms. McAfee. We had award-winning yearbooks every year that I was at the 10 years I was at Jack Yates.
Wow, now that's an accomplishment for some of you young people at Jack Yates. Let y'all know this legacy, y'all. This is history. And you're not taking my word. You're taking somebody who already been there and done that.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
You know, I'm so grateful that he takes time out to explain this and tell us about this history. You know, because I look back at some of the, like you say, some of the games, football games that you and your classmates, your students at least, some of your students had videoed and took, well, they didn't have video during that time. They had reels.
Film, yeah.
Films.
Right.
They had films. Okay, and I think about all of our Turkey Day games that y'all done.
Yes.
Man, and I guess that, and the good part about it, Mr. Gentry, you know, is that the first year you was there was in when you came there.
1963.
You know, to see all of Miss Yates.
Yes.
That comes out there during the halftime.
Oh yeah, we filmed Miss Yates coming out in the helicopter. First time ever in the city of Houston, a queen came down at halftime in a helicopter. That was something to see. The stadium was packed. People on there, both sides, Wheeler's side and Jack Yates' side. People from all of Houston. You could, even in Fifth Ward, my parents lived in Fifth Ward, my mother, she'd come to the games. You could rob Fifth Ward and some of Third Ward during that time because the people all left to come to the games. You talk about us, a spectacle to see. Dressed up, dressed to kill. And of course, people like my mother had to ride, they rode the bus in Fifth Ward to the games. And then they had to walk about a mile almost to the stadium because the bus stopped at Holman and Sampson.
Wow, you know, you see all this here, and you talk about this history, and this Turkey Day Classic, and you filming that. All of these films, just imagine, you guys, if we had access to those films today. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. We got to keep up our legacy. And just because it happened yesterday don't mean you have to bury it yesterday. Document yesterday. Because you never know, yesterday could turn out to be tomorrow. What you did yesterday could be the same thing you might need to know tomorrow.
Exactly.
But we don't look at it that way because we can't see no further. And especially these class reunion committees. They the worst of the worst. Because right. they sit there, they take everybody money.
Yeah.
But then they don't let everybody know what the heck they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they done lost the legacy of their school and their class,
yeah.
trying to save a god doggone dollar.
Exactly.
And some of it ain't even $1. Some of them I even doing for free.
Right.
But you know, and I'm so glad, man, I can sit down here and talk to you without making an exclusive video by myself. Because this has been such a hurt and pain to me. And now one thing I do admit, I videoed the Booker T. Washington class of the 80s. And one thing too, Mr. Gentry, that I did, being on social media.
Yes.
I know it's about 6 years ago. Booker T. Washington didn't have a Facebook page. So I said, I'm going to set up a page. I told a friend of mine, James Sherrod,
right,
and another friend of mine, Kenneth Howard, and another young lady went to Booker T. Washington, Maddie Hayes. I said, I'm going to set a page up because there's no sense of us not having our first black high school without a page here on social media. And when I set that page up, I set it up with Booker T. Washington Junior and Senior High School.
Excellent.
So
Very
people
good.
wouldn't think that Booker T. Washington always started in the ninth grade.
It did not.
And then the good part about it, Mr. Gentry, we got over 1,800 people members of that page today.
Very
and it's
good.
still growing.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. That's progress. We thank you, Robert, for doing that. We appreciate you, man.
Well, it's all about trying to help our black legacy in our schools. And you know, and I get to seeing one thing about a young lady about the Booker T class of 1980. And they are so good and so righteous that I videoed their class reunion. Their 50 class reunion, I think. Anyway, I videoed their reunion. And they understood, some of them understood the legacy that we putting down and part of Booker T. Washington.
That's good. That's excellent. I appreciate that.
And-
And I know they appreciate it. I'm an alum of Booker Washington. I'm very active in Booker T. Washington Alumni Association. I've been on the scholarship committee since 1981. So, and I've been active with the Alumni Association. I've served as a historian. I've served in many capacities that need to be served on for Booker T. Washington. Everything but the president and the vice president. I've been treasurer. I've been historian. And as I stated, I've been on the scholarship committee since 1981.
You know, and it's so good to know this, Mr. Gentry, to know that all the commitment that you have did for Booker T. Washington, and also, you know, you had to spread your love between Booker T., which that's your heart,
Yes, sir.
and Jack Yates, who you helped groom some of the kids to be like me.
Quite a few of them.
You know, and I get to seeing that one thing too, Mr. Gentry, about Booker T. Washington. When you came out of there, it was Dr. Ira Bryant, and then later on, when they decided to make a move, when the white people didn't want Cashmere High School because all the blacks was moving in,
Right.
and then they had to send Dr. Ira Bryant to rescue. And this is something I didn't know.
Yes.
This is what I didn't know. Mr. Allen E. Norton
Yes.
was the man.
Yep, he was.
I didn't know that, y'all.
He was the man.
He was the man.
Yes.
And in case y'all want to know who Mr. Allen E. Norton, that was the first principal of Evan E. Worthing.
High school.
And when the school opened up, Mr. Evan E. Worthing wanted that man because that man was the first black to be in the HISD administration, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. You're right. Yes, sir. You're correct.
And when that man, and by the way, Evan E. Worthing, the original Evan E. Worthing over there at 4900 Belford, the land belongs to Mr. Evan E. Worthing. The money that they put up came from Mr. Evan E. Worthing, and Mr. Evan E. Worthing wanted Mr. Norton to come out of the administration to be the principal of the school that was named after him. How, boy?
He did.
Woo!
Yeah, that's history.
Man, it make me cry, man.
That's history. Yeah, he did. He did.
So every principal had to be interviewed by Mr.
Norton.
Amen.
Yeah.
For you Worthing coach out there, tip your hats out to Mr. Norton. Because I love him and never met him.
Yeah. He was quite a guy.
He was the man.
He was.
He promised the people out there in Sunnyside And him and Mr. Worthing promised them other people some. Mr. Worthing had all this land, and he had all these rental houses out there, and he was tired of seeing some of his tenants having their kids to go all the way from Sunnyside to 3rd Ward over there to Jack Yates to 2610 Elgin.
That's right.
To get their high school diploma.
And he established he established a Worthing Scholarship in 1952, I believe it was.
That's right. And
the scholarship is still going on. The money is still being used for Worthing scholarships at this late date. It still is.
And you know, we're looking at that, Mr. Gentry, like you said. Mr. Worthing have always been giving blacks an opportunity for education by giving out the scholarships, like you say, since 1952.
Yes.
And now, back to what we were saying. When Booker T left, or when Dr. Bryant left over there to go open up Kashmir in 1957, they still out there in 4th Ward, which we know today is Freedom Town. Now, was Mr. Huckabee assistant principal?
Mr. Huckabee was assistant principal at Booker Washington during that time.
Okay, so when Dr. Bryant left to go open up the new Kashmir in 1957, Mr. Huckabee took over the school.
Became the principal.
Okay.
Yeah, became the principal.
And then when they moved from 4th Ward to 39th Street, which was Independent Heights.
Yes.
And then that's when
Mr. Huckabee was still the principal.
He opened up that school. You know, so we want to get that. And then he retired in 1964. And then that's when Mr. Wesley came from Adams.
Right, exactly.
To be the principal over there at Booker T.
Exactly.
Am I on target?
You're on target, sir. As you know your history. Exactly. That's what happened.
And you know, and it's so good to know that all this history, a lot of people didn't understand, came from Kashmir. It came from Booker T. Because even my best friend, who I work for today, him and his wife, her name was Rudine, and her mother name was Miss Hill.
Yes.
Callie Hill.
Callie Pride Hill. She was the English teacher, my English teacher at Booker T. Washington.
And you know, and to know that she started over there at Booker T. Washington, and she left to go over there with Dr. Bryant to open up the new Kashmir school.
And she got a chance to be my daughter's English teacher at Kashmir. My daughter got caught in the crossover. They had crossover. If you were living close to, she was going to Wheatley. She got caught in the crossover and had to go to Kashmir. So she had a chance to experience the teachers that I went to at Booker T. Washington her senior year at Kashmir.
Yeah, because see, a lot of teachers and stuff, they were just like the ones they left to follow Dr. Ira Bryant.
Dr. Bryant took his staff with him.
Right, because he had to have a new staff.
Yeah, he took his staff with him.
And I look back at that, and when Dr. Bryant went there and opened up the Kashmir, and he also took Conrad Johnson with him too.
He took this band teacher. He took Conrad with him.
To open up. So for some of you people who want to know about Kashmir history, this is what Kashmir history is. It's the offspring of Booker T. Washington.
Yeah.
Just like Jack Yates is the offspring of Booker T. Washington. You know, that's why Booker T. Washington is the granddaddy of all the schools. And Booker T. Washington was here in 1893. You know, and you know, a lot of people didn't understand that Jack Yates was the first brand new school that they built for blacks.
That's right.
Because see, Booker T, which at that time was called Colored High, they gave that school to blacks.
Yeah, they did.
Out there in 4th Ward.
Exactly.
That school they gave Phyllis Wheatley out there on Lyons and Gregg, they gave that school to blacks.
Exactly.
But in 1926, they built a brand new school.
Exactly.
Which was the first black brand new school that they built. And that was Jack Yates in 1926.
Yeah, you're right.
And they wanted to make sure that they have the right principal to open up this new school. So who do they go to? James D. Ryan.
Yeah.
Boy, this is history, y'all.
Yeah.
And we tell these young people, and some of the young people understood. If you don't know your history, you ain't gonna know where you're going.
That's right.
If you don't know what happened in the past, you will never know what in the hell's going to be hitting you in the future.
Correct.
Am I right, Mr. Gentry?
You're on target, Robert. You're on target. Yes, sir. You're definitely on target. See, if kids, some don't want to know, and some of their parents don't know, so you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you don't go. So the parents don't know the history, and so they can't teach to their kids. And these younger kids are going to be lost. So that's why I'm glad you're putting this documentary together, so our young people will know their history.
And you know, it's so good to know it because I got a young lady. Her name's Stella. She finished Jack Yates class of 1982, and she and her mother went to Kashmir, and she looks at a lot of our videos, and she go back and ask her mother, and her mother say, "How in the heck did you know that?"
Yeah.
You right. I said, "Well, I look at Mr. Williams' video."
Right.
He says, "You know what they tell him? He sure is right."
Yeah, you're right.
And this is what we need, Mr. Gentry.
Definitely.
You know, and I'm so glad that I can sit here and talk to you about this. And I hope it won't be the last time that we can talk, because life is short, Mr. Gentry.
It is. It is. Robert, I'm glad. I'm awful proud of you, man. I'm glad that you're putting this together, because if you hadn't done this, most of our people would be lost. They wouldn't know anything about the previous history and then some of the things that we went through, coming up from the 50s and up to the 60s and 70s. But we appreciate, man, you don't really know how much I appreciate you. You're doing an excellent, superb job of documenting the history of our schools.
No, I'm sitting here with Mr. Johnny Gentry, Booker T. Washington, class of 1953, a.k.a. what they used to call you.
I still call me T-Bone. My nickname is T-Bone.
In fact, that's what my pastor and his wife call Mr. Gentry, T-Bone.
That's my nickname.
That,
from both wars, from basketball days. Not really basketball days, but it was, because I was on the B team then. All those guys were ahead of me, and so I made I was a high point man that night. So I said, I'm not eating no hamburger now. I'm gonna eat me a steak. So,
and that's how you come up with the name T-Bone.
Well, so Coach Harvey said. So one of the guys said, "Coach, I was a high point man last week, and you didn't say anything. You didn't see, and we still had hamburgers." So Johnny said he go eat T-bone steak. He said, "T-bone, look at him. He look like a T-bone." So he said, "Be gone, T-bone." So all the boys start teasing me.
That's how the name T-Bone come, because I know a lot.
T-bone.
Yeah. I know a lot of people I talk to in Fort Worth. I say, "Mr. Gentry, oh, you talking about T-Bone?"
Yeah. Well, not even at TSU, I was called T-Bone. My professors called me T-Bone. So, Johnny Gentry, who's Johnny Gentry? That's T-Bone.
You know, and it's so good that most of you guys hear this here, and this is something that I had to let you guys know how my nickname Boo Lee came up.
Boo Lee, yeah.
You know, a lot of people. Well, when my mother, when I was first born, my mother used to call me Boo. Everybody that knew me on Cobb Street, they would always call me Boo. And then later on, when I got to be about 8 years old, most of our middle name was Lee.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my cousin William Harvey, the Jack Yates class in 1960, bless his heart, he lived out there in Little Rock, Arkansas. He decided to say, "No, that ain't just Boo, that's Boo Lee." So he added the Lee to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, when I go a lot of places and people say, "Man, that's Boo Lee, that's Boo Lee." Yeah. And then when somebody say, "That's Robert Williams," I say, "Oh, I must have took a class with them." Because they the only one knew my real name.
Right, right.
You know, and I say this before I close out, Mr. Gentry, about how short life is.
It is.
Me and you remember Eddie that used to help me. They went to Wheatley.
Went to Wheatley, yeah.
Yeah, right. He used to. In fact, he started the group called the Masters of Soul.
So, right, exactly.
And me and him was out in Fifth Ward. It's a true story. And it was right before Thanksgiving, about the same time in October. And me and him went over there and talked to Mr. Singletary, which was one of the first black millionaires here in the city.
Exactly.
He was the only black to ever own a hotel downtown. It was called William Penn.
That's right.
And me and Eddie we went over there and talked to Mr. Singletary. And we told Mr. Singletary, and I told Eddie, I said, "Man, why don't we just wait until the first of the year And that way we could start out with something real nice about Mr. Singletary and how he got started in when he got out of Fifth Ward. How did he get started out of Fifth Ward? And I asked Mr. Singletary, would it be all right? Mr. Singletary said, yeah, we can wait until next till the first of the year. And do you know, Mr. Gentry, the day after Thanksgiving on the Friday, Eddie Will passed away.
Wow.
Wait a minute, that ain't the worst part.
Wow.
The next day, Saturday, Mr. Singletary passed away.
Wow.
Look at all of that history.
Yeah, gone.
Gone.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we don't understand. We as a race of black people, it's like this. When we had a chance, we would do it.
That's right.
But now we don't have a chance. Now we want to do it.
Exactly. You're on target.
So in other words, what I'm telling you guys, if you got a chance to do it now. Don't wait till tomorrow.
Don't put off for today, for tomorrow what you can do today.
Because it's just like I said on this video here. When you got a chance, you wouldn't do it. Now you want to do it, but it's too doggone late.
Yes, sir.
And now you're sitting around moaning and groaning to yourself and beating yourself on the back. Why I didn't do it?
Exactly. You're on target.
So what we're saying today before we close out, Mr. Gentry, is don't put off, and you guys have always told us this when we were coming up, don't put off something today. Don't try to put it off tomorrow.
For what you can do today.
For what you can do today.
Do it today. Why not do it today? Yeah, do it today.
Because tomorrow
isn't promised to you. I tell people I put my boots on every morning. I don't know who will pull them off this evening. I put my boots on every morning. I don't know who will pull them off this evening. You put those shoes on this morning, Robert. You don't know who will pull them off this evening. Robert and I interviewed today. Tomorrow, one of us may be gone.
That's right.
So we don't know.
But
But thank God for Jesus that we are doing this now.
Giving us the grace.
That's right. And Robert, I really thank God for putting this on your mind. And man, anytime I can be of any assistance to you, call me, man. I'm as close to you as your bone. And you always welcome in my home to do anything you need to do to promote what you're doing.
And I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Gentry.
Blessed of the Lord.
God bless you.